about the categories. This one here talks about the different scheme forms, and I think there's another more detail on my class streets and
Yes, it's a financial font. The breakdown.
Okay. All right. Well, look, I think we'll just proceed with the questions at this stage, but it may well be that we need to ask the committee to actually provide an assessment of the total lot and bring it back for final confirmation. But, you know, I really don't want to hold up these four. They're core critical to the network, and it just shows that we've got so much more work to do. But, you know, we want to build on the momentum that's already been started. There's huge public desire for these cycles and cycleways, and what we know is that people will change their mode of transport if they're safe and secure cycleways for them to ride on. We know that will happen, and I might be one of them. Phil.
I just want to ask a question in relation to Rapanui Shag Rock, and where I'm coming from is in terms of it not being delayed, because the submittal this morning from the committee board referred to the park, which would take it, the cycleway was going to include. I think it was near Humphreys Drive, and my understanding though is that what wasn't clear is that in fact the staff recommendation, Eric Banks, who wrote the report, also recommended that the staff option was in fact workable and the right one. But I just want that clarified.
That's correct. We had an options report. We were asked to look at a further option, which we did, and we put into the matrix, and we went back and talked to that community board about that. And showed the results of our assessment and the advice that we'd received regarding ecology, etc., etc.
Thanks, John. Can I just also further clarify too that when we're referring to reports going to the community board, in fact, if a community board as a board said, look, we'd like another option to be considered, that in fact the staff would give that full consideration.
Correct, and that's what we did on Rapanui Shag Rock.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah, now I've got Glenn. Pauline, did you have your hand up? You're fine, and okay, so Glenn, then Raf.
Thank you. I'd like good speed and good process. This is probably more Democracy Services question. It's about that 6-month time frame, which is largely in our hands as elected members. But can you see some efficiencies, Peter, where we can trot right back on that 6-month consultation and approval time frame? As it's much longer than the actual construction and delivery of it.
Well, it can be done in parallel, can't it?
Yeah,
I mean, it
can we
doesn't
do
have
it
to.
sort of contiguous?
You can do a lot of design work preliminary while the consultation's going on. I don't think it's.
Well,
I
it's
think
time.
that's in our hands. The legal requirement is pretty clear. So many weeks has got to be in the public arena. Yeah.
So we don't know how long we can chop off.
No. Well, but it's going through the LTP as well.
That's right.
Yeah. Although we may have to review the timetable for some of that. But yeah, we've got a bit of work to do in a very short space of time. Raf.
Look, I still haven't really had an answer to this question. When the original budget was approved by the previous council, did they know that that was based on, let's say, less than rigorous numbers? Or did they believe that that would be the full cost of those cycleways?
And I think what I said was obviously the staff didn't make it clear to them that it was rough order of costs.
Okay. And would the previous councillors concur with that?
Yes, I can't remember that it was said it was rough order costs.
It was turned around very quickly, wasn't it?
Yeah, my view is that it did have a political context. That's all I'll say about it.
Okay, because I mean, just to follow up on it, clearly that came up at the beginning of 2014
Yeah.
during the annual plan, and there was a lot of talk about the cycleways being delayed or whatever.
Yep.
Why was it not brought up then? I mean, that's the
I
bit that
can't
is
understand
missing
that.
for me.
I can't answer that question, and we haven't had an answer. It's not right, actually, that because the submissions that people made were about the timetabling, and we were advised that it had nothing to do with the cost. It was to do with the timetabling.
But we also had
And
a
that
real...
was because the money was on the budget, but there was not sufficient money on the budget. That's what we're hearing now, but we didn't find that out until the capital program process or the LTP process, which is, it's not a good process. I think we've all learnt from this.
Yeah, and I think we also, if people remember, had a professor of finance in from the University of Canterbury who came and questioned the business case for the 68 million, and clearly there hadn't been a business case, and I'm still not seeing a business case for the 156 million. And as Dave says, you know, the cost per kilometre is quite high, and we're still not seeing
No.
the business case to support the extra investment. And clearly, nobody could complain with, you know, separated cycleways, and
Yep.
we would all love them, but it's a, you know, large amount of money to invest
Yep.
without any supporting evidence.
And maybe that's something that we should add to the recommendations, and that is request a business case for the balance. But what I want in here is how much are we actually signing off for each of these today? I mean, how much are we putting on budget for these 4 routes? So can we have the dollars attached to these? Because it's going to have to, at the end of the day, if these are not robust figures, then it's going to have to come back to council anyway. Request a business case for the Cycleway projects. It's going to have to be reported back very soon. I mean, presumably there's the work's already done. It's just a question of pulling it together. It's 55 million for the 4?
Well, we've got the numbers of each one.
The current 3-year plan has $9 million in it, allocated to major cycleways. It's across the 13 routes for this financial year. The final recommendation is to expand or carry on with the 4 priority routes that are listed there in the agenda item, with developing or carrying on with the process through those 4 in accordance with the recommendations today out of that budget. Obviously, the discussion around the next, beyond 1st of July 2015, that comes into the 25th LTP.
Yeah, but in terms of our process, and it may not be the way things that councils have operated before, but I think this council's made it quite clear that what we need is we need to have a proper set of recommendations, fully costed, and we need to then allocate that money for the budget. And that's what we're doing in the long-term plan process, but it needs to have it needs to have some transparency around it, sort of almost independent of the LTP process, so that we can, I mean, the community's going to let us know whether they want this or not, and we have to provide them with really good quality information so that they can say to us, yes, we want the cycleways, but no, not this version because this is too expensive. Or they might say to us, yes, if that's what it costs, then that's what I want, because I'm not going to use a cycleway unless it's actually secure for me to use. And given the target group, and you know, as being the, what was it, the keen but nervous or something, you know, then maybe it's yeah, maybe that's the decision that people will make. I mean, Christchurch is a flat city. We've got this opportunity to build cycleways, an opportunity that we haven't had as good an opportunity ever before in our entire history, well, since cars arrived. And so this is our chance to do it, but there is a cost attached, and we've got to be really transparent about that and show people how it's made up. We need to look at ways of reducing those costs, and we need to look at ways, you know, well, of engaging people in this in this process, which I think we've done reasonably well up until now, but I think we've just been slightly let down by the timetabling of the increase in costs and letting us know, and even letting the previous council know in sufficient time for their putting money on the budget in the first 3-year plan. Jamie, you were around in those days.
For my sins. Just wondering around, was there an invitation for me to ask the question?
Yes, of course.
Just with the business case, is that envisaged that that would contain, I guess, possibilities around deferral for some, just like a range of options? The reason I say that is because if you look at, there'll be some routes that are more compelling than others, purely if you're looking at it from a numbers or usage basis. And I almost wonder then if there's always multiple ways to skin a cat, but you know, if some of the things aren't stacking up to do, you know, things in one foul swoop, that potentially looking at others to say, well, actually, the business case is more attractive or more viable for the city council if we say acquired the corridors for some, but then and then lease them back to someone that could have a better use for that land in the interim, and but however, in 12 years' time, we'll complete that. Is that the sort of thing that business case would have, or would it be more of a desktop exercise than delving into that sort of detail? Sorry.
Yeah, I guess in terms of the business case, we would have to look at, obviously a business case would look at the options, but we'd need to complete the route option study to be able to do that, complete the pricing to the full cost estimate to be able to inform that business case. And we also, I guess, in terms of leaving some sections out, then we wouldn't achieve the objective of that connected network all the way through.
I think that the trouble with the answer is that we've inherited a commitment to the Cycleway network. We were asked in our annual planning process not to increase the amount on budget, but to defer take longer time to deliver the project, so from 5 years out to 8 years. That caused the majority of the submissions to the council on the annual plan. So, I mean, in the face of the fact that it didn't make a jot of difference to the annual plan, because the annual plan wasn't 5 years out, it was only the 1 year of the 3-year plan. It didn't make a jot of difference to it. So we said, well, if it's got nothing to do with money, we'll bring it in. Somebody should have said, excuse me, it's going to cost a lot more money and we need to do some more work on that, because we need to bring a paper to you as a new council to confirm that you're still willing to proceed given the additional costs. Now, that requires a business case. We're talking $160 million. That is not a small amount of money. There is no way that this council is going to spend $160 million without a business case. I mean, you wouldn't expect it. Is it because they're individual cycleways that nobody's seeing the big picture? This is a network that we are developing here. It is a substantial sum of money, and to be responsible as a council, we need to see the business case. And I'm thinking that it's not going to take very long to put together, because you must have all of the information essentially at your fingertips. It's just a question of drawing it all together in a business case. Is that not clear?
I think we've said in that, yes.
Yeah.
And the financial implications, our expectations is that we'll consider this as part of the 2015 LTP. All we're asking for now is to work within the budget we've got to keep going on the consultation phase with these 4 routes and bring it back to the infrastructure committee for sign-off. So you wouldn't be signing off you wouldn't be signing off the dollars then, you're just keeping the process going.
Well, hang on, that's not what it says. It says, well, we've changed the recommendation so that we're referring the final decision to the Infrastructure, Transport, Environment Committee for route selection. So that means that we're assuming that we're going ahead with the whole program. That's what bothers me. we actually, I mean, look, I want these to go ahead. They are the top priorities. Unicycle and Papanui Parallel are absolute core critical. I mean, and as I've said, I don't know the other two so well, but those two are fundamental. They're like the spines in the network. So I just, you know, and maybe Rapanui Shag Rock, you know, meets that criteria as well, and Clorryman's Trail to the south into the city. So, you know, I mean, maybe these are the four elements of the network that are core critical to the whole network being developed. But we need the network decision brought to us as a separate paper with the full costings, so that we can sign off on that. It will be in the LTP, but if you think that we would go, if we can just go, the financial implications are to be considered as part of the 2015 long-term plan, and it's just putting it on the budget for the capital works program with no decision of the council, you know, with a proper paper, with all of the, you know, regulatory impact analysis done, and a business case, then we couldn't spend $160 million without that rigour. That's all we're asking for, is financial rigour. Vicky, and then Paul, and then Pauline.
As I said, what we heard at the time of the annual plan last time was people saying, please build these cycleways.
Yep.
So as I see it, we're getting on with 4 in terms of the planning, and we've started them anyway. I mean, parts of them are actually starting to happen. So we need to build those. We know that they stack up. Interestingly, whenever, like the Sumner Road, what is it, Dave, 110 million? One road? Sorry, never mind. It's about 110 million. We did a flyover the other day that I think was about 30 million. We did a sewage thing in Nakaroa, that's about 80 million. We spend these sorts of money all the time, actually. And because this is cycles, it's getting actually far more scrutiny than it would if it was cars. And yet we have, as a prioritised system for the council, and we had it the other day, the fact that number 1 is pedestrians, and that's what we're spending a lot of money on in the central city. Number 2 is cyclists. Number 3 is public transport. And number 4 is freight. And number 5 is cars, private cars. Because unless you prioritise your roads that way, your roads simply do not work, or your transport infrastructure simply does not work for any user. So if you prioritise cars, as we have for a very long time, you clog up the roads and doesn't work for pedestrians, it doesn't work for cyclists, doesn't work for public transport, and doesn't work for freight. So we know that we are going to do a modal shift, and it is one of the exciting elements that the City Council is actually going to do it. So as I see it, we now have a targeted rate in place. We're about to get an announcement from NZTA of increased funding for major urban cycleways, which is good. We're going to apply to NZTA for as much subsidy as we can, and since we'll be in the best place of any council to apply for it, we'll grab all of the money that's available from the government for increased urban cycleways, or as much as possible anyway. But we need to get on and do this. I know.
Oh, hang on. There is a question here.
No, I thought we were on debate.
No.
Oh, sorry. Okay. I'll stop then.
Well, I don't know. Oh, okay. All right. We'll carry on. Sorry.
So the important thing is that we have 4 routes that we know are really important. We've done the priority. We've done a huge amount of work. We're negotiating with groups like the university to get access across the fields. We've been negotiating with Riccarton Bush trustees to get access across there. Let's just get on and do at least these 4. If the entire population says, at the time of the annual plan, or a huge percentage of the population says, no, don't do cycleways, which I certainly don't expect, but if that happens, then we have done these 4 from the current allocation of budget, which is currently 68 million on the long-term plan, and it will be difficult to do many more. I don't expect that. I expect that people will say, actually, we are willing to pay more. Whether it's a targeted rate or in general rates, we want cycleways. We want to feel safe, And those of us who are not game to cycle down Riccarton Road or any other road because there's a car right by you, or a bus or a truck, even worse, want separated cycleways. And we are willing to change, with large numbers of us are willing to change, as we know from the research, willing to change our mode of transport if cycling is safe. What we're doing here is getting on with the 4 key ones. This has been a really long, slow process. Yes, I know there's a process that we still have to go through, but we just need to get on out and delegate to the Environment Committee, Infrastructure and Transport, or whatever they're called, the fact that they can get on and actually make some cycleways happen in the city.
Well, Pauline had a question, so I'll just get her the question first.
Thank you. I was just about your NZTA and MOT subsidies that you've put in the table of costings, and I was just wondering how accurate are those percentages that you've cited there at, I don't know, sort of 25% and 30%? Is that, you've put it potential, so how do you arrive at that kind of figure?
The 25% is used for the whole roading capital program in terms of NZTA across it, because only certain elements of the roading program that's delivered each year are fundable. For those elements that comply with NZTA's funding criteria and are approved by them, we get 48%. So the 25% is a broad average across the whole program as an expectation of what total funding we're predicting we will receive from NZTA under their normal funding process. The MOT funding is a separate fund that is being established by government. There's indications that they are looking at that as a separate fund from the normal NZTA.
Is the MOT one the 100 million for urban cycleways across New Zealand? Is that the fund you're talking about? Okay, so the NZTA potential subsidy figure would seem to me to be fairly accurate, your pitch?
So it's the broad average that we use across the whole roading program, and that's just the application of it to the cycleway component.
Oh, thank you. That's helpful. Thank you.
Paul?
One is actually sort of playing both rules and making amendments to the resolution. So unless we've got finished the questions, I'll come back to
Are there any other questions? Yanni?
I just want to be really clear. How much money do we have currently on budget for cycleways, and how much money have we spent since the council made that cycleway decision?
I can't answer the second part of that question because I don't have the information with me today, but in terms of this current financial year, there's just under $9 million in the 3-year plan for financial year 14 that are for the across the 13 routes.
Because the figures I have is that this year we're supposed to have 13.5 million on budget, and 7 million was in 13-14, and we've only spent about 6 million. But obviously that may have changed through last year's annual plan. That was when the council did the unaudited 3-year plan. But I'm just trying to understand how much difference these 4 routes are compared to the money that we've currently budgeted on.
The current budget is a multi-year. Each of the projects is split over a number of years. So the sum total of all 13 for this financial year that we're currently in is just under $9 million.
Right. And what was it last year? Like, what's the total? If you look at it, if you think about, we've had 2 years, and there's been a number of allocated towards the major cycleways over those 2 years. I'm just trying to understand what that total has been. Because obviously this year, 1st of July, we'll have a different budget. And then my understanding is we've spent about 6 million. No, sorry, we've collected about 6 million from the 20 July revenue, and we've spent about $3 million on design. Is that? I'm not sure.
We don't have the numbers to hand currently for last year or the previous year.
But a lot of the last 2 years is design and that sort of thing. So it's not money that's going into digging up roads. Well, there's been a little bit of work done on some of the intersections.
The expenditure to date has been on undertaking some survey work, some route prioritisation work, and some consultation work, and various parts of the reports there have been designed to a greater level of detail, but there has been no physical work undertaken on any cycleways to date.
I think the note Jane sent around before said 68.8 million over 5 years is the current budget.
We don't actually have a budget after, we've only got a 3-year unaudited plan, so anything that goes on beyond the
Right.
3 years isn't actually on budget.
No.
So in the 3-year plan that we currently have, my estimate is that we had about just for the 3 years, close to 29 million on budget for the cycleways.
Right. So the difficulty is that we are looking at this across multiple years. I mean, they're not all going to, all the money doesn't come in 1 year in terms of all of the different stages of the development of the cycleways. And I think that's probably one of the problems in terms of what's been missing from our ability as a council to get that global view of the cycleway network. So maybe this last 7.10, if we could turn that into request the Chief Executive to provide a report to Council. So I'll get it to come directly back to Council since, unless, I don't think it needs to go to your committee. On the complete costings for each component of the major cycleway route program. Yeah, it's to actually see the total picture. So it is the components within each of the routes, so that we're getting that over, and then we'll have a total for the program. Along.
I think gross costings without the subsidies could be very misleading. I mean, do we give both?
Okay, that's fine.
I don't know. It's looking worse than it is, way worse.
Along with any potential contributions from NZTA and MOT, is it? Yep. And full stop. This report is to contain a regulatory impact analysis to support the business case, to assist Council's consideration of the 2015 long-term plan.
With respect, we got into trouble before through committing to do something in a time frame we couldn't deliver. So I'm just going to ask my team to tell us what we could deliver in that time frame that would help.
The LTP is being signed off on the 30th of June. So
Yes.
is that not possible to do that?
Can you just...
So to have a detailed costing for every single route and every section of of the routes would require us to have taken the designs for all 13 routes to the point where we could give a detailed costing.
Okay.
We have done that for sections of the first 5 routes, and we can certainly bring back a report on the basis of that to show how the numbers that are contained on the addition today are built up in more detail, and how we've arrived at those estimates based on the current design guidelines. But that is...
provide a report to Council on the estimates, on the current estimates
For the first 5
for each route. But
The basis of.
yeah,
Okay. Do that?
for
The
each
basis
Yep.
of.
The
route
basis
of the cycle route program, along with any potential contributions from NZTA and MOT. This report is to contain a regulatory impact analysis to support the business case to assist Council's consideration of the 2015 to 25 LTP.
Right, yes.
Yep. All right, so now, Paul, you had another amendment.
Yeah, look, I just want to thank staff. I know that this is a huge report and a lot of work's gone into it, and I think this council, as you said, Mayor Leanne, that we are really, really supportive of this major cycleway program. The amendment I'd like to make is the agree to the major cycleway route programs being declared a metropolitan program, which is correct, but the decision-making power remain with the full council. Now I just want to say why that is that you've heard today here the amount of concerns around the table about this program and the amount of money that we are having to invest in this program, and I think there needs to be retain that ownership by the full council, because you've got in the IT committee and there are 3 boards that aren't represented on that committee. I have concerns around the committee taking care of the concerns from the public around loss of parking, and I think this actually ratifies that in a major way, is that there will be loss of parking. We know that, and we accept that. However, often this loss of parking affects those small wee communities, and Yanni and I have been dealing with the issues in Redcliffe's directly around this here. I mean, we have to accept there's going to be loss of parking there, but these are at the expense of these major key activity centres who build major car parks on their plot, and they kill off these wee small amenities in these small areas. And to me, as a community board representative for the Hagley Ferrymead and the council for the Hagley Ferrymead board, I want to be dealing with that directly with my constituents. I don't want to live in the hands of someone else, and I think that's really important to me, and I don't know how other councillors feel. And I'll just highlight the concern around that, is that the IT committee, and I respect all the work they do, but they brought an item to the council where they were going to remove 6 car parks outside a small shopping area for a cycleway that wasn't going to take place for 10 years. Now, that is a concern I have in my own ward, that doesn't happen. So, as I said, because of the size of the project, because of the cost of the project, and because we are all quite passionate about making sure we deliver a really great project for our people of Christchurch, I want to be thoroughly involved as a full council and keep that visibility and that decision-making power. We can represent our boards who some of the members on there have concerns and quite rightly so, and they have ideas, and I want to make sure, and I stood on the fact that we want to strengthen the power of the community boards and have more involvement from our community boards, and I think that is often the way we do it, is bringing those decisions through our community boards. As elected members around this table, we air those concerns, we debate those concerns, and I believe we actually come up with a far stronger outcome and a far better outcome. So, as I said, the amendment I want to make is to agree with all the first part of 7.4, but to the full council to remain the full decision maker.
Okay, look, I want Phil to kind of wrap things up, so I'd rather call you at the end if that's all right. So, Ali?
Thank you. I think it's clear that 2 of the key components, basic components of a safe cycle system, is the traffic lights and intersection changes, and that's where we're seeing the huge increase in costs. But any increase, particularly one as substantial as this, has got to be questioned, and I think that's what we've done today. It's got to be answered, and it's got to be answered robustly and transparently, and I think we're starting to get that information now. I think one only has to sit in the car at the moment at some of the intersections around Christchurch where the green paint has gone down but the signalised changes haven't been implemented, just to see how unsafe it is for a cyclist who takes off ahead as a car turns left, the cycle thinking they've got the right of way. I've seen several near accidents, near misses and that kind of situation, so there is no doubt that we need that degree of safety around our intersections. But this is a huge amount of money, and it's a huge amount of money, especially at a time where, we still have hugely broken roads, we have broken houses, and to be frank, our rail is still hugely underutilised, in my opinion. I support the route selections today, as they are priorities, and I think what's important is that they can operate effectively outside the wider network, and I think that's really important to consider when you don't have all of the information around that wider network. They can operate as standalones. I will reconsider my position around it, though, as more information comes in, because
I think we have to, well, we've now been able to look at those new designs and the related figures. And I think, as already has been said around the table, I support cycling. It's really important in Christchurch, and I encourage cycling. And it's not about, I don't agree with Councillor Buck, I don't think it's about whether we want cycleways or not. It's actually degrees within the cycleways and reasonableness in the current environment, and not to the detriment of cars. We do need cars. I can't go to the supermarket on my bike. So I think we have to look in the real world here as well, and it's not all or nothing. And I think we need to look at a citywide transport strategy. I think we need to look very closely at rail, and we need to also look at the regulation and the regulatory system around transport in our city.
So, Tim, Pauline.
I think it's no question that the safety is priority. Our parents, our partners and our children are precious, and I'd like to see my children biking more, but at the moment I'd be very reluctant to see them biking in certain places. So it's totally support the cycleways. But I guess what we heard this morning with regards to Rapa Nui, if you take an example of Brown Street, it's the best way to go from A to B for trucks. I don't want to see cycleways treated the same as roads. I want them to be a part of the community and loved by those communities that they travel through. Probably following on a wee bit from Paul with regards to those community shopping centres, etc. That's how we're going to get people to adopt and love cycling even more than they are now. So I would really want to see the involvement with the community boards. I know we are going to get different opinions, which we've heard this morning, but we can engineer anything, but it's about putting the passion in those cycleways for those communities that will undoubtedly be affected by those cycleways going through them. So I totally support it, but I just want to make sure that those local communities affected by the cycleways are fully involved. Thank you.
Pauline.
Thank you. Well, I think that when you look at it across the whole project, it's really like we're creating a whole new roading network for bicycles, and personally I think it's a real bargain. And also when you throw into the mix the savings that will be made through less injuries, accidents and fatalities, it's even more of a bargain. But I was wondering if I can make a comment about the amendment. Is that appropriate?
Yep.
Because I support other councillors having input into the project, but how about a suggestion to the mover that it stays with the IT committee, but councillors can attend with voting rights?
But they can anyway.
With voting rights?
Under our current standing orders, that is the case. But I like
with voting rights? Is that? Because that's the key.
Do they? Oh, that's right. Speaking but not voting.
Yeah, because that way it would stay in the fast track process, but each councillor would be able to put their view and vote on their view pertaining to the award or any other award. Would that?
Which is Paul's.
This is that one there.
Oh, I see. So I need it. Well, I haven't got a seconder for Paul's amendment.
These are kind of amendments that we've done together. So Paul was happy to move these, and I was happy to second both of them. And we kind of wanted them considered and voted on separately. But we've been working together on it. So there's just some confusion when we gave them in.
But what's confusing is that depending on, I mean, I like the second one, but the first one just defeats the whole purpose because it puts all the time constraints back into the process because it comes back to council for a final decision.
Yeah, I was just trying to get a process where we get these two amendments put up, moved and seconded, so we can then debate each one separately.
I prefer your one.
Well, they're different amendments on different parts.
I know that they're different ones. But anyway, so you're seconding Paul's?
Yeah, Paul's moving the two, and I'm seconding both. So
Right.
it's one amendment and two parts.
But they're contradictory.
No, they're not. They're basically both amendments to the chair's recommendations that we've got in front of us.
Okay.
So there's a 7.4 and a 7.7. So it's just amending those two and replacing with.
Okay. Yeah, we need a mover and a seconder for the original motion, but, well, I suppose you get a right of reply, don't you, at the end if you... Eh?
I would be good to speak anyway, but I want to speak actually against the amendment.
But then, but I want to kind of give you the final say, though. But do you want to speak now and then...
Well, I think in terms of this...
But I need a seconder for the motion, sorry.
The whole motion?
The whole motion. I'll second it, so there you go. Right.
Look, I think in terms of the amendment, I think what councillors need to keep in mind is that the people we represent said, look, we want the cycleways, and especially these first four, we want them in fast. In fact, we want them in now. And I think our council knows that, in fact, if for an example is when a community board can't agree among themselves, that then makes it difficult, say, for the committee. Now, there's scope within the recommendations for full involvement by the community boards. There's no question there. And I guess what it seems to me, though, is if, in fact, council want, if the amendment is supported and council want to make this decision, so be it. But clearly then sometimes these things go backwards and forwards from the committee to council. And if councillors are voting for that, and an example is what we had today, where, you know, one member of a community board couldn't agree on the options which have been recommended, this thing will go backwards and forwards often. And what I will again point out is that's not what the community asked us. They asked us to have these fast tracked. So there's no doubt that clearly the whole financial implications will need to become before council and will. So I guess it's over to councillors. If we want council to be able to work nimbly and fast, I oppose this amendment and support the original recommendation.
Right, now, Paul, now Tim's already spoken, so Pauline, did you want to speak to the amendment or to the motions? No, I've spoken. You've spoken, and Glenn?
Thank you. My view on this as a user and elected rep of cycling, there was only a slight pause in my...
He's a rider.
Am I right?
He's a cyclist.
Multitasker. That's right. Is that, well, really you have to be dressed up like a circus in Christchurch, and even then you take your life in your hands. Look, I really support this. We need a dedicated cycleway system, and I think if we deliver this, it delivers the vision that the people wanted of the city, a clean, green city, but let's do it well. It can be really inspiring. It can be a real, you know, it's real vision casting for the city, but we've got to do it properly and nail down the costs. I support Paul's intent and Pauline's of how to have us all involved, but I want speed and process. So it's going to take a fair bit of doing to get this right. So those are my main concerns, getting the speed and the process and getting those costs nailed down so that we can do this well and really lead the way. And I think if we have this dedicated cycle system, that will really mark us out as a city, and that will be something good that comes out of this. So let's get into it, but it won't be easy.
Yanni.
I'm just a little bit confused. Are we debating the amendment or the...
We're debating the whole lot together.
Okay, cool. So, right, well, I'm probably one of the few councillors that was here when we made that decision to do the cycleways. I strongly support doing the major cycleways. I think it is absolutely essential. And in fact, it was Councillor Carter and myself who got council to agree to send the Christchurch Transport Plan back before it was approved so that we actually got proper, better cycleways in place, because we were concerned that the transport plan was really reliant on freight and cars and not focused enough on getting those major cycleways in. So I actually also wanted this done over 3 years rather than 5 to align with the SKIRT program. I thought that would give us a lot of opportunity. That was nearly 2 years ago. So things have been slower than we would have liked. Two years on, and we've got some designs. We've carried forward funding every year, but we're now in a position where we can go on and get some done, which is great. I think it's really important that we recognise these as being metropolitan projects. Have no issue with that. I think it makes sense. But we shouldn't get away from our good democratic processes of using our community boards to engage with their communities. And so that's why I'm supporting these amendments. If you want to have a conversation with a local community about closing Worcester Street at Fitzgerald Ave, then I think the community board is the best place to have those conversations. They liaise with the residents groups on a regular basis. They've been dealing with things like Latimer Square when it got closed previously. They have a huge history of working with that local community over what happens in that area. And to not allow that community board to be involved in a significant local decision that impacts significantly on local people, like the closure of Worcester Street at Fitzgerald Ave, I think is not fair. It's not fair to those people that were elected. And community boards don't necessarily add more time to the process. In fact, most community boards around the city are quite nimble and meet when they need to meet, and they can meet at short notice. They can make additional meetings and time available, and in fact, they welcome the opportunity to be involved. So I think it's really important that we, as a council that got elected on a clear platform of supporting and strengthening our community boards, are not seen to be blaming them for the reasons that things aren't happening, but instead provide them with the resources and the opportunity to do what they do best, which is liaise with local communities to get good outcomes. So I have confidence in our community boards. Might not agree with everything that they come up with, but I think we have to trust in them to actually do the work that they're tasked with doing. I think it's really, and councillors won't be surprised, but I haven't enjoyed the way in which we've delegated things away from the collective council. I think over major things where we're spending lots of money and things that are having a metropolitan impact on our city, that it's every councillor's right to be involved in those decisions. I think you're elected to represent people and you're elected to be here and make decisions for the good of the city. And I don't think we should take away the right of any elected member around this table lightly from being involved in making those decisions. So I won't support delegating to the committee. I do like the idea that the council can make the final sign-off. And again, if the committee had been able to have all the councillors attend, I would have preferred that option, but we've heard the legal advice that it can't happen. So I support Cycleways. I think we can be nimble in our process to get these done in as soon as possible. And I don't think we should say that going to council or going to a community board delays the process. I think, in fact, it speeds it up and that people see a more robust, transparent system of decision-making that is expected under local government.
Jimmy.
First, I would like to emphasize these cycleways very crucial and important. If we go forward, one aspect will comply with the Christchurch the transport strategy, and also to take a kind of active traveling and have a kind of multi-transport mode. Because based on the vacation mentioned earlier, if we consider priority, pedestrian, walkway, cycleway, public transport, and the cars, public cycleway second the priority. And also based on the investigation, we are all aware, currently popular cyclists around 10%. However, if we build up this cycleway facility, they will have potential 30% the people, they have an interest and the intention would like to be a cyclist. So that's a huge potential. Secondly is I just want to emphasize but safety issue is still very crucial and important. So in here we can see if we adopt the major cycleway design principle based practice design guide, and also the staff that mentioned earlier already, probably you back to the at least 2 years ago, last term councillor, we actually, is hurried to kind of to make decision because all those the information is from the staff. Staff give us the cost, give us the kind of information, is whether it's on road only or need to consider off road only. That's very limited decision. However, due to this part of the long-term plan, part of annual plan, so in that restricted, limited information, we make this kind of we will make that kind of decision. However, right now, staff give us more sufficient information, so we need to face the new information, make a proper decision, and this is update. This is also our proper attitude, I think. Third one is the regarding to the priority, because in here, if we review the page 271 and the page 273, in here quite clearly, already to kind of prioritize the ranking for those 13 cycle program routes already, because there is a comprehensive methodology. We need to recognize there's a specialist. They're the kind of knowledge, they're the kind of specialists, strategic fit, the high use, the potential, travel time, reliability, improvement safety, and also the economic support. I think that's very the kind of comprehensive information. But regarding to the whether it's support this kind of amendment or support the original, my personal view is not a contradict or conflict. How do we speed up the progress and also consider the community board get involved? But in here, if we review the 7.6, in here quite clearly, the appropriate or affected community board member involved in the committee, make the kind of decision or bring to the council. Because right now it's kind of, we need to consider balance. It's more faster or it's more kind of the grassroots, the consultation, etc. Need to try to the balance. But I think 7.6 in here already consider community board issue, yes. So this is, we need to recognize this is the fact. But regarding the budget, this last one, I agree that we have add on the 7.10, try to have a further study regarding to this 88 million the dollars. That's our attitude. So thank you.
Andrew, David.
I'll keep this brief, but yeah, strongly supportive of the cycleways and strongly supportive of delivering these cycleways as quickly as we possibly can so that we get the opportunities for modal shift and safety for cyclists as soon as possible. My main concern when I first saw the staff recommendation as set out in the original report on page 139 of the agenda was the ability for the community boards to be involved fully in the decision-making process. And for that reason, I was pleased to see the amended staff recommendation on the separate sheet that was handed out, because that actually does address this in a way that I consider to be meaningful. It gives the community boards a role there, both to be involved in the discussion and to make a recommendation in each case. Now, the deputation this morning that we had from Isla MacLeod certainly demonstrates the level of local knowledge that community board members have that needs to be taken into account in these discussions. And we've heard elsewhere in the debate today that, obviously community board members will have differing views. The opportunity for the boards to make a formal recommendation for the committee allows for that debate to happen around the community board table and for a vote to be taken and a recommendation to be put forward in the usual way. So the community boards certainly have the ability to debate this and to put forward a recommendation to the committee. And I've got every confidence in the committee that they'll fully consider the recommendations from the community boards with an open mind, and the community boards therefore will have a meaningful part in the process. In terms of the delegation to the committee, you look at the report and you see the huge amount of technical knowledge that the committee need to be across in order to make their decisions. I'm aware of the huge amount of work the committee have done already. I'm certainly happy in this case for this matter to be delegated to the committee for decision making. I think it'll speed up the process, and I've got confidence that they've digested all of this technical information in a way that because they've worked on it, they can understand more than a person coming into this late in the piece would be able to. So, I'm going to vote in favour of the original, the recommendation as it's put today, and I won't be supporting either of the amendments for the reasons stated.
Dave.
Thank you. I'll be even briefer. I've sat in this chamber on numerous occasions where committees have spent hours and hours and hours on various subjects only to come here and have the whole lot re-litigated. There is the opportunity for any member to sit in on any committee. They may not have a vote, but they certainly have the opportunity to speak and influence the decision. Yeah. I particularly support 7.10 on in the motion. We're asking for a breakdown of costs. I am still a bit concerned about the cost per kilometre, and I've sat here and done a bit of a calculation, and they range from $54,000 up to $1.5 million per kilometre. So I am very keen to see the breakdown of how we come to the costs of these various cycleways. So I am a big fan of getting these cycleways underway. I'm a huge fan of getting as much of it off-road as possible. With regard to the timeline, I'm reasonably flexible. Let's do it as quickly as possible, but we have to be fiscally responsible. I'd like to see it allocated in our budget in a fashion that we're not biting off more than we can chew. So I will be supporting the original motion. Thank you.
And I'm just going to say a couple of words before I hand over to Phil to wrap it up. The major Cycleway route program is absolutely vital for the modal shift that we know will come about if we put safe cycleways in our city. Absolutely clear cut that will happen. I've met people who work in business parks out the Russley area. You know, they cycle to work every day. They are dealing with the frustrations that are there. I know that the numbers using their cycles will increase as soon as they can rely on them. But it's not just the individual choice, it's parents having the confidence to put their kids on bicycles to travel to school. This has major benefits for the city's well-being as well. You know, I mean, we all biked to school in the olden days. For goodness sake, the point of difference of Christchurch is that it's flat. You know, the major parts of the city are flat, and we should have easy access. It's true that people have this love affair with their cars, but you know, most of the roads are going to be fully available to cars, and actually just some of the roads are going to have a cycleway as part of their them, and I think that that's really important. I've reflected on all of the conversations around who makes the decision. Sometimes one of the issues is that when you're too close to your community, which is why I'm actually going to support the second of the amendments, if you're too close to your community, sometimes it makes it more difficult to make a decision that might be controversial at the local level, which is why I think it's better to bring it back to the infrastructure committee to deal with. I remember in New York City when the Transport Commissioner promoted a whole lot of cycleways through particularly busy little business districts. The businesses were up in arms. They said, we don't want cycleways. So she put them in for a temporary period, 12 months. They couldn't believe how much their business expanded in that period as people slowed down and saw what was on offer in their places, and those little areas that had cafes and various things, you know, they started to see that their business increase in their return by 30%, their turnover increased by 30% in some of those areas. So that's the sort of thing that we need to be sending out there by way of a message in terms of what is beneficial. Now, if you only have cycleways which are about getting from A to B, then you won't get that benefit either. So it's got to be a combination of them all, which is why I like the network approach. The last thing that I want to say is about financial rigour. Now, this is my first time going through an LTP process, and it is kind of like never again. But what it has highlighted for me is that the separation between the activity management plans and the capital program doesn't work. It's not financially rigorous. You actually need to combine what the organisation is doing with the capital requirements of the organisation as well. And the approach that we've had to date is not acceptable. So I do apologise to the officials at the end of the table who've had to hear for the first time that this council isn't going to accept large capital works without the kind of rigorous analysis to back up good decision making. And to comment on what the Deputy Mayor said, it is true that we spend millions of dollars on various projects relating to roads, but I think they've got to be subject to the same rigour as well. When we're spending large amounts of ratepayers' money, we actually need to have a very clear understanding of value for money, the cost-benefit analysis, the business case principles that you would see applied to any large expenditure on a central government basis, and actually in the private sector as well. So that's the kind of rigour that I think is really a message to the Chief Executive that we're going to expect from here on in. It isn't separating Cycleways from the rest of the projects. It's actually the Cycleways are going to lead the way in terms of the way we want to do to make these decisions in the future. And I'll let Phil just wind it up.
Well, look, besides the geography of Christchurch, we've also got some history. And like previous minutes going back to the mid-1950s show that on Colombo Street, 5,000 people a day were biking to and back from work. So we can regain that. I think, though, the essential thing is that this is a huge infrastructure, and the advantage of putting in cycleways is it will take off that threshold, that top. 50, even if it takes 15, it starts with 15%. It starts to relieve our traffic congestion, and we need to get that done. That is essential for the city. The people are telling us that in no uncertain terms. I'm actually opposing the amendment part because it just seems to me that is very much business as usual. I don't think as a council we've got time to keep on fiddling while we've got this sort of congestion. The community board chairs have told me in person, each one, that they were happy to work with the committee and they will be part of the committee. Okay, every board chair has told me that. The staff have already talked with the community boards. Most of the cycleways, the first two anyway, are starting to be underway. There's very good work already been done, and I don't want that jeopardised by this process being delayed. And I personally don't need to make the decision at all as chair of this committee. But I'm prepared to take it on, and I ask for your support so that in fact we get things done. That's what I was elected for, and that's what I want support from this council to do.
Excellent. Right. So the advice that I've received is that I need to put 7.4 amendment first. Because if that is carried, then it makes a difference as to who the final decision maker is. So I will put the amendment. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. No. So do we want a show of hands? Those in favour say, put your hands up. And right, so that's Yanni Johansson, Paul Lonsdale and Glenn Livingston. And those opposed, put your hands up. And that's everyone else. So that is lost. So we'll move to the next amendment. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. All right. We can have a division on that. So if you could throw that up on the... Angie, Goff, Cotter, yeah, right, I think that's everyone. That is carried, so it will go back to the community board before and after consultation for recommendations to come back to the ITE, but the ITE remains the decision maker. And so now I'll put the whole motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Excellent. Right, now, I think it is down to me to move that